How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of A Playmakers View. I'm your host, as always, Jamie Burdish. I hope you're doing well out there. The spring is amongst us, and with the spring, that means a lot of great things for sports. We have the NHL playoffs coming up, the NBA playoffs coming up. So, with that being said, today's guest is Valley Sports Talk. They are a group of guys who have a sports podcast, just like myself. And recently, I reached out to them. They gave me a follow. I DM'd them and said, hey, let's get on a podcast together. Let's talk sports. And they agreed. So here we are. Throughout this episode, you are going to hear our thoughts on the NHL so far and who we think has the best chance to win the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. With that being said, I hope you all enjoy, and let's get started. All right, so let's get started. First off, thank you guys so much for joining the podcast. It is an honor to have you guys on. Thank you also for, engaging with my content. I really love that, and I hope that more people will do that so I can have other people on the show as well. So to get started, I want you guys to introduce yourselves personally and what your podcast is all about.
Yeah, we want to thank you for asking us to come on. It's really cool that you sort of engaged to us to ask us to come on. My name's Noah. I'm from the Valley Sports Talk podcast. Basically, we're just the reason we started our podcast was just we're a bunch of guys that we usually argue on sports takes. We figured why not start a podcast. On our show, we talk NHL, NBA, and NFL. Mostly NHL and NFL, but now the NFL season's obviously over. We sort of transitioned into NHL, which is happening right now. And yeah, that's a bit about me.
Like Noah said, I'm also a co-host in the Valley Sports Talk podcast. It's an honor to be on here. A little about me. Like I said, my name's Brandon. Currently going to school at the same place Noah is here in Nipissing, North Bay, Ontario, taking health and physical education.
Awesome. So to get things started, I want to first hear your thoughts on the NHL season this far. We're going to be talking a little bit about our predictions and thoughts of the season so far, as well as the playoffs. But, so far, what are some of your favorite moments and maybe surprises about the season this year?
Maybe some surprises for me is it's been a really good year for goalies. We talked about this on our episode that comes out tomorrow, but there's so many goalies that just have had bounce back seasons or not even bounce back seasons, just sort of like been showing out. Like there's like a good 6 guys right now that the Vezina could go to just because they're having such insane years. Obviously, also it's a very strong rookie class. Like there's people like Mo Sider, Lucas Raymond, Bunting, Zegras, they're just all like showing out why they should be in the NHL. And it's really exciting to see that the league has a really good future. And then another sort of thing for me is just Ovi. He keeps breaking records. Everybody's thought he's going to slow down, but he just hasn't. And even as a Pittsburgh fan, it's kind of hard to see, but at the same time, it's also really cool to see for the game.
I totally agree. The goalies, there's a certain group of 10 goalies who are playing phenomenal. And even if you look at the points from players, like the scoring isn't down, players are scoring at a normal to above average rate. And there's goalies that are still playing well. Another thing I found surprising was how different the two conferences are. Like if you look at the Atlantic and Metropolitan, so the East Division, basically, the playoffs are basically locked already. You basically got your 8 teams in there. And then if you go over to the West, there's the wild card. You still got 5-6 teams battling out. And I find that surprising that the two conferences are a little different. And then the thing I like to see the most was Noah will like it. Sidney Crosby getting his 500th goal. It's a pretty cool milestone.
Yeah, I've been really surprised with the older guys. Obviously the league has a lot of young talent, but those older guys are really keeping up with them. It's been really exciting to see. One question I have about, surprises and kind of things about the NHL, but the Canadiens, I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on them because obviously they were a team that was literally in the Stanley Cup playoffs, final, and now they're, almost dead last. So what are your thoughts on that? What has gone wrong? And, what do you think they need to do to improve?
Personally, what popped into my head right away was how big of a role leadership plays on this team. You notice your 2 top leaders in Shea Weber and Carey Price have not played this season, and obviously they're second last place in the NHL. So I think leadership has a big role in that team, and the fact that they're sort of missing that, I feel is hurting them. To get back, I don't even know if it's possible. They're basically out of it by now. Yeah. The way to get back is like they're doing right now. They got a new coach. They're Martin St. Louis. They're playing a lot better with them. I think they just need to get confidence back, he's done that by putting Caulfield on the first line, which I think is a great move, get his confidence back, and just in general, get the confidence of the group back. So
I'm honestly not too sure what went wrong last year. I didn't really think that they were sort of a good team. I think it was sort of like a fluke run for them to go to the playoff to the final. Sorry. And what Brandon said about Caulfield, that was sort of like the one thing I think they should start doing now. I think they should sort of, prioritize on those young guys. Play Nick Suzuki as many minutes, play Caulfield, play Romanov on D. Whether the Carey Price comes back or not, who knows? Honestly, at this point, I'd just save him till next year. There's no really point in him sort of coming back whenever this year's already lost. So you might as well get him completely healthy and good to go next year, because they have a good roster. Like, I don't know why, what the heck went wrong. Like, they have good players. Before Toffoli got traded, he was a great player. They have Josh Anderson. They had Mike Hoffman, who's supposed to score goals, and I don't think he's really done that very much. So, I think it's just kind of an off year for them, and I think they should try to just scrap this year and come back for next year.
Yeah, every team has those kind of seasons where it's just kind of a throwaway. And, like I'm in agreement with you about them going to the finals, because I really, when I was watching hockey, as I always do, I didn't really expect them to be a team that was in there. And, the Lightning kind of had an I wouldn't say easy route to the finals and to win it, but I definitely did not see them being a team that was in there. So yeah, I mean, obviously a throwaway year for them. I really like the coaching change. As a Blues fan myself, when Berube came in, I don't think they obviously are way out of it, but it'll be, I think for next year, it'll be a really good change and allow them to do better things next year. So my next question for you guys, I want to dive into the power rankings, specifically like the top 5 right now. What are some teams that you're liking right now? Obviously the Lightning are up there, and I had a stat. It was no team has won 3 cups straight since 1981. And that was the New York Islanders. So do you think that's a possibility this year? I mean, obviously they have a really strong team, but winning the Stanley Cup is probably one of the hardest things to do in sports. Like, when you look at all of the championships that there are, the Stanley Cups are a long ride. So what are your thoughts on that and the other teams that are in there as well?
like you said, winning the cup 3 times in a row is almost impossible. And it would just be crazy obviously it's possible, but it'd be crazy to assume they'll do it again. I really like, obviously, how could you not? I really like Colorado. They're just built for the playoffs. They got an amazing first line. Kadri's really stepped up. Their defense are electric. Their Darcy Kemper is doing enough to hold them down. A couple other teams that I like in the top, I like Noah's Pittsburgh Penguins. They've been there before. They know what to do. So yeah, they're always scary in the playoffs. I like Florida. They're really energetic. They're fun to watch. And then same you can say about Carolina. They're just so good in their own defensive zone, and then they can turn that into magic on the offensive end so easily. So I really like those teams.
Yeah, the one team that I'm really high on, obviously I'm going to be high on Pittsburgh, it's my favorite team, but I'm very high on Carolina. I think they're just an all-around really well-built team. You got Frederick Anderson, who's having a bounce-back year. He's in the Vezina conversation. You got players like Slavin. You got Tony DeAngelo, who's a great offensive defenseman. You got Brady Shea. I'm probably missing somebody else on that blue line. But then you look up front, and there's no, lines 1 through 4 could go against any top line. You got Aho, you got Teravainen, you got Trocheck. I'm probably missing somebody else, but I just think they're a real good rounded team. And then Brandon said Florida. St. Louis, obviously your favorite team you just said.
Yep.
I think they're really well-rounded. Sorry. It's just a goalie situation for me. I don't know if Binnington will do it, but then I don't know if Husso, I think is his name pronounced right.
Mm-hmm.
He's been very good this year. So it'll be interesting to see which goalie they sort of lean on in the playoffs.
Yeah, obviously I am a huge Blues fan, and that was going to be my thing as well. My top team right now, I think, is probably the Avalanche, but my biggest thing with them, and I'd like to you guys comment on this as well, but with the Avalanche, I mean, they've been really good for the past 3-4 years, but they remind me of like how the Dodgers were. The Dodgers in baseball were always a team that was really good, 100-win season, and then finally last year, they obviously were able, in past years, were able to get that World Series. But the Avalanche are similar to me, where they have so much talent and they just win so many games, but they haven't been able to find the answer in the playoffs, which will be interesting because I think this could be a year that they do so. But I'd like to hear what you guys think about that as well, because there's a lot of factors that go into it as well. Like we said about the Canadians, we didn't expect them to win. So before we do the Avalanche, I would like to ask you about your sleeper picks, maybe if you have any of those, like going into the playoffs. If there's an 8 seed or someone that's on the brink of making it, do you have any teams like that?
My sleeper would probably be Minnesota. They're not really a flashy team, but they just keep getting it done. And the one sort of thing that stood out for me is Cam Talbot. He's backstopped that team the past couple of years. I don't know why Edmonton let him go, considering the Oilers' goalie situation right now is pretty bad. But they definitely be a sleeper team. Another team you can never really count out is Boston. They're sort of clinging on to that last wild card spot in the East. And just with Patrice Bergeron, Pastrnak, Marchand, they're never really a team that you can really count out.
My sleeper team in the West, even though it's hard to call them a sleeper team because they're the 1 seed, is the Calgary Flames. I feel like if Vegas is fully healthy, they're probably the 1 seed. So, but the Flames, they've had the same sort of team for the last couple of years. They gel, they understand the system, they all know how each other play. They added a player like Toffoli. Like me and Noah said in our podcast that comes out tomorrow, we think they could add a defenseman in the trade deadline, possibly bring back Mark Giordano. They have a great goalie. Markstrom's playing really well this year, leading the league in shutouts. I think they're a team that if they get on a roll at the right time, they're definitely really dangerous. And in the East, I'm going to have to agree with you, Boston. Being a Leafs fan, I've seen them too many times. Again, they also have a pretty similar team to what they've had in previous years. They gel really well together. That first line's great. You can never really count Boston out in a playoff series. I've learned that. So those are my 2 sleepers for sure.
Yeah, Boston is definitely one of those teams that I'm not a huge fan of. But I think that they definitely do have a good chance to make a run. I mean, obviously, all these teams have a good chance when it comes down to it. But I wanted to, my second team, I know the Lightning are up there and the Avalanche are up there, but honestly, my other team were the Leafs. I mean, I think the Leafs are really well put together overall, and I think they've been proving themselves in the second half as well. I mean, you can play really well in the first half, but in the second half, they've been, moving up to their standards as well. So what are your thoughts on them as well? I know, you're a fan of the Leafs, but, do they have that chance to make it as far as people might think?
I mean, obviously, I'm going to say yes to that. We all know they have the talent. It's got to be a mindset that they got to change. Obviously, the way the Atlantic Division is going to go, they're either going to play Florida or Tampa in the first round, so it's not going to be easy. But like we said, they got the roster. The goalie situation has been sort of crumbling a little bit, but if Jack Campbell can get it back together, he can definitely keep him in it. He did it last year against Montreal. Their defense is better, in my opinion, than it was last year, and they got a gritty third line this year that they didn't have last year with Kasha and Camp and Mikheyev. So I think they have a little bit more well-rounded team, and I think that'll help them in the playoffs.
Don't give Brandon too much confidence here talking about the Leafs. But, my one thing is I think they're going to add someone big at the trade deadline. Dubas has never been really scared to give out first-round picks, and whenever you have a team built around Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, Riley, TJ Brody, you can throw in there. You want to add, like they've been linked to almost every top tier trade target right now. And I don't think Dubas will be very scared to make a move if he has to.
So if it were to come down to it right now, I want to hear the playoff or the Stanley Cup final prediction, like who would be facing off. And with that face off, who do you think would win?
That's such a hard question. It feels weird because Colorado and Carolina are the top 2 teams in the NHL right now, and that's normally not how it pans out in the playoffs. But they've just played so well, and Carolina's been there the last couple of years. They've come a little bit short, but their play definitely has Stanley Cup potential. Like I said a little bit earlier, they have such great defensemen, and they move the puck up and create offense so easily and so flawlessly. And then Colorado, obviously, they've come up short the last couple of years, but in the last couple of years in the playoffs, I've noticed that when they didn't do well, it's because only that top line was scoring. And we all know in the playoffs, you need you need contributors, from a bunch of other players. And you got people like Nazem Kadri stepping up. Obviously, Cale Makar is having a great year. So I think Colorado and Carolina would be a really good matchup. And I've been riding Colorado for the last 3 years to win the Cup, so I can't leave them now. I'm going to say Colorado would win that.
I'll go boring too. I'll go Canes and I'll go Canes Avs too, but I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to say Canes just because I like them better, well-rounded. I think the goalie situation for Carolina would be better in a 7-game series versus Kemper.
All right, well, I am going to go with the Avalanche, and I know you said not to give them too much confidence, but I'll give it to the Leafs because
I would love it.
I do think they are a solid team. Like, they are just all around, and they have some veteran experience as well, which goes a long way in the playoffs. And I think the Avalanche have that as well, but there's something about the Avalanche to me that they just can never put it all together. So, I mean, that's just how I feel about it. I know that other people might see it differently, but that would be a great matchup. And I think regardless, we're going to see a lot of great play in the playoffs. There's so many great teams right now. And like you said, there's 2 really good top teams right now, and they could definitely be in it, but so many different teams have a chance. So I want to end by, allowing you guys to share any final thoughts that you might have. And again, thank you so much for being a guest, and hopefully I can get you guys some viewers, and your viewers can come to me as well. But if you have any final thoughts, please feel free to add those.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go with your point that although we're picking the top 2 teams, like you said before, this playoffs is going to be amazing. Like, you look at the East, the final wildcard team is the Washington Capitals right now. So if you're saying that's the worst team going into the East in the playoffs, there's no such thing as an easy matchup. And you got the same thing over in the West. You got the Dallas Stars and the Nashville Predators and Edmonton Oilers battling for the last wildcard spots. You're going to have good matchups regardless. There's not going to be a so-called easy route to the Stanley Cup. So it's going to be a fun watch. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Brandon sort of summed it up. It's, the playoffs are a grind. You got 82 game season, then you got 2 months worth of playoff hockey, and teams are starting to play in their games right now, like playoff hockey. Like Brandon said, the East is basically set in stone unless Columbus somehow catches Washington for that last wild card spot. But I was just watching the Pittsburgh Lightning game, and there's scrums after every whistle, so it's starting to get like playoff intensity, and I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. And one thing I also love is that there's actually fans to be able to watch the game, because the difference between the atmosphere is awesome. So like you guys said, it's going to be an awesome playoffs. Really looking forward to it. And for the people watching out there, please feel free to drop a comment with who you think is going to be the Stanley Cup playoff winner, and even just the matchups that you think will be good this year. But again, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you joining, and we will be back with you very soon with another episode.